Welcome back. Chapter 39. Catherine. There is so much I need to untangle with my mother. After we sip our coffee and devour the hummus and veggie wraps a cook in the kitchen slipped me, we begin to talk. Hours later, I've barely scratched the surface of what I want to know. For the first time, my mother is opening up to me. I can tell it's excruciating for her to dismantle the wall she spent more than 2 decades fortifying, the one she wanted to keep me contained within. But she clearly understands the only way we can go forward is for her to invite me into her past. We've been sitting in chairs beneath the shade of a big sprawling tree. But even though it has grown uncomfortably warm, I don't want to move and rapture this strange new intimacy. The stories my mom is weaving of how vicious her mother was to her and Timmy, and how James plotted to punish the Palms coach for his sexual abuse, and how she hid in a Target until a month before I was born, saving every penny she earned as a waitress until she had enough to rent a tiny room for us, are jaw-dropping. Okay, so she's starting to tell her. It's hard to reconcile those tales with the image I have of my mother as a hardworking woman with a vanilla sort of life. I guess I've never really looked at my mother as an individual. She has always felt more like a planet that orbits around me. Now, maybe that's true for most daughters, at least until we reach a certain point in adulthood. We define our mothers through the lenses of how they relate to us. By now, my mother has explained how she lured James to their old meeting spot and alerted the police. As soon as we confirm his arrest, she tells me, we can go back to our apartment. My mother sighs and leans back into her chair, looking drained. Her skin has a yellowish tint, and she is so thin her cheekbones are even more prominent than usual. She runs the back of her hand across her brow, wiping away the light perspiration that has accumulated. I'll help you figure everything out, she says. You can still move to Baltimore. We can pack up the car and drive you there next week. I crumble the thin styrofoam cup in my hand. I think I should figure things out for myself, I finally say. Hurt briefly flashes across her face. Fair enough. Because I don't want to look at her right now, I reach into my backpack for another folder for the folder Tin left me. I picked it up from her desk before getting lunch for me and my mom. I pull out the contents. There are a few forms Tin wants me to fill out, and a dental plan pamphlet, and a blue and white parking sticker for Sunrise with his name and logo and the current year. I stare down at the parking pass, thinking that I'll never get to use it since I'll be giving Tin my resignation for the second time. There's one more thing I want to ask you about, I say. My mother's eyes are closed, but she opens them at the sound of my voice. Ethan, the night of our anniversary. My mom sighs and sits up a little straighter. Whatever she's going to tell me carries the feel of vital importance. It will reveal not only how honest she is committed to being now, but will also help me gauge if her deceptions were not solely to protect me, but also to keep me close and exert control over my life. You drugged him? What? Her shock appears genuine, but it isn't enough to convince me. He said you poured him a drink and then he passed out. My mother shakes her head. Here's what really happened. He left his phone at our apartment the night before. This computes with what I know, so I nod for her to continue. It got wedged into one of the cracks between the couch cushion. I didn't even know it was there until I got off of work that afternoon and was watching something on TV and felt it vibrate beneath me. My mother's eyes are steady on me. I'm sorry, Catherine. It was vibrating because someone was texting him. When I pulled out the phone, I could see the first line of the message on the screen. My stomach twists. I feel a little nauseated. I know what my mother is going to say before she utters her next sentence. It was another woman. Her voice is gentle, but even after all this time and with everything else going on that should make Ethan's betrayal as inconsequential as the bee buzzing around me, it hurts badly enough that I fold my arms across my stomach. It feels like no one in my life was who they pretended to be. I take a shaky breath before asking, what did the message say? I could only read the first bit since his screen was locked, but it was enough for me to know they slept together that afternoon before. The afternoon before, when Ethan told me he was busy with preparations for our anniversary, I'd imagine him buying roses and washing his sheets and writing me a love note on a card, not screwing another woman. So you set Ethan up? My mother shakes her head. I went out and brought a bottle of vodka. I offered him a drink when he came by. He made his own choices. I dropped my head into my hands. I poured him his first drink, but he poured his second and the one after that. This was sipping vodka, but he wasn't sipping it. That's the only reason why he passed out. I don't know what to think. Everything is muddy. Why didn't you tell me the truth? I cry. Why can't you ever tell me the truth? My mother's hand lands on my shoulder, but instead of soothing me, it burns. I shake it off. I thought it would be easier for you this way. Ethan was your first big love. I was worried about what it would do to your self-confidence if you knew he was cheating. I thought it would be better if you were in control of the way you broke up. But I wasn't in control. I tell her you were. A thought tickles the back of my brain. She could be lying again. I need proof. See, that's what happens when you lie. People don't believe you no more. The girl who texted him, I began. What was her? It's like my mother knows what I'm thinking before I even say it. Caitlin, she replies. I've never forgotten it. That's the name of the woman Ethan is with now. The same one I'm almost certain is the blonde waitress who seemed to send poison in my direction whenever I came in to see Ethan. I never once mentioned her to my mother. She must be telling the truth. So Ethan deceived me too. I must be pretty gullible. No, people are just liars. Exhaustion falls over me like a weighted blanket. My brain feels completely overloaded. It's shutting down. My head is too heavy to hold it up, so I tilt it back against the hard wooden slats of the chair. My last vision before I close my eyes is of my mother getting up from her chair and beginning to patrol the grounds. When I open my eyes again, there's a throbbing in my temple, and the sun is lowering in the sky. I check my phone and see it's after 5 p.m. My mother is sitting next to me, but she isn't sleeping. She's writing something in a green spiral notebook that looks 1,000 years old. She noticed me watching and closes it and slips it into her big purse. Did I miss anything? Someone came out and drove off in a Cadillac a few minutes ago. She says, a couple. He had white hair and she was wearing a pink dress and used a cane. Oh, that's George and June. They're probably going out to dinner. She nods. No word of anything else? I say. It's a statement, not a question. I only have to look at my mother's face to know the story of James' arrest hasn't broken. We just have to wait a little bit longer, my mother keeps saying. I stand up and stretch, then go into Sunrise to use the bathroom. I walk into the main floor break room and take a few cookies off a giant plastic tray that someone set out for the staff, then fill 2 cups of water from the dispenser. When I return to my mother, she put down her phone. She bites into one of the oatmeal raisin cookies, washes it down with a big sip of water. Thanks. Time ticks forward. My mother's face grows a little tighter, her posture stiffened. I'm thinking, what if she lied about James? The sun is sinking lower in the sky. A few floors above us, the Memory Wing residents must be growing agitated. Something about this phase of night triggers their sense of danger. I'd hoped to be home by now, taking a long, hot shower. I like to close the door of my bedroom and be alone with my thoughts. But twilight is falling, and we're trapped in limbo. We should walk around back, I finally say. We've been sitting out here a long time, and by now most of the residents are inside, finishing dinner and settling in for the night. The grounds are nearly deserted. I don't want to attract attention. My mother gets up and we circle around the building. It's far less attractive back here. Instead of manicured flower beds, the trash and recycling are stored in a huge metal container. There aren't any chairs or benches, so we stand. I try to pass the time thinking about what I'll do once this is all over. I'm scheduled to work tomorrow, so I need to have a difficult conversation with Tin and come up with a reason for my reversal. I can't tell her the truth, but neither do I want to lie to her. I'm fed up with lies. The last wisps of gray in the sky are being overtaken by black when my phone buzzes. I flinch. If Ethan is texting me again, I'm going to tell him off, then block him. But it isn't Ethan. The incoming text is from George Campbell. Catherine, I notice your car is still here. Could you come see me in June as soon as possible? There's something important we need to discuss with you. What? My heart sinks as I read the words. I thought I did everything right, telling my mom to fill the tank to the 3/4 mark and making sure I didn't leave anything in the Cadillac. What could have tripped me up? Perhaps George noticed something off about his vehicle, and June mentioned I'd been rummaging around in a bowl that held their keys just this morning. Now they suspect what I've done. What is it? My mother asks. I turn around my phone screen so she can read the message. Her face falls. Oh no. That's the end of chapter 39. Okay. At first I was thinking that Ruth was lying about James, but then I thought about it. He was in, or was he in Pisa Piazzo? We don't know. Because Ruth could have set the fire because that's the old stomping ground, and she could have just made up the story that that was James. We don't really know if it's James, right? But according to the news, he did evade. So there's a possibility that that could have been James. Okay, and then at the end of this chapter, I don't think that's George. Because didn't they just see them drive off? And they've been sitting there for a long time, so they would have saw them come back, right? I think that might be James sending her a text. And if that's the case, he knew where they were this whole time. That's why the police ain't catch him. And that's why he said, see you. Because did he put a tracker on the Bonneville? He could have put a tracker on the Cadillac too, because he could have been at Pisa Piazzo before Catherine even arrived that day. And he saw her pull up. See, you got to watch your surroundings, see who's watching you, because people be watching you because Catherine went in to the Pisa place. He wasn't there. Then all of a sudden, he came in, right? Right. So there's a possibility he knew where they was, and he knew Ruth was lying about meeting him. Let's see. I'm going to see y'all in chapter 40. Bye.